Good evening, happy Sunday, and welcome to another episode of the Digital Orthodontist Live. I'm your host, Dr. Kyle Fagala. Happy Hanukkah to those of you celebrating that tonight, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to the rest of you. This may seem a little different because we're here on Instagram, not on Facebook. I wanted to explain that very quickly, if I may. Unfortunately, Facebook discontinued the one thing that made me create this show on Facebook, which was two-person live streaming, and so now my best next option was to use Instagram, which also happens to have two-person live streaming. If anyone can find out exactly why they decided to delete it and let me know, that would be wonderful. I'm already seeing a lot of people logging in, so thank you for doing that. Fantasy football, I want to talk about that. If anyone's in the fantasy football finals right now, this is my league's trophy, and I have won it 3 years in a row. You'll see that. It's 3 years, and I'm actually about to win it a fourth year in a row, and I know what you're thinking. Are you in an 8-team league? Are they terrible? No, it's a 12-team league. They're all very good. I'm just very, very lucky, and I spend a lot of time on fantasy football. If you're a Bears fan, I'm sorry. I just checked the score to see if Allen Robinson was going to beat my team. Miraculously, he is not going to, and it looks like the Bears have not even entered into the game. Tonight, we have Dr. Jonathan Nicozisis on the show. If you're not an orthodontist, too, I must tell you, this is not going to make a lot of sense. You're probably going to be very bored with what you're about to watch. We're going to be talking about orthodontics, and if you're an orthodontist, this is the right place for you. Dr. Jonathan Nicozisis is probably someone that you know. He's a huge name in our profession. He is a good friend of mine, and he is actually one of, I would say, our biggest supporters of this show since day one. We're going to discuss the top 5 biggest moments in orthodontics from the decade, so 2010 to 2019. I'm very excited to do that. We're going to talk about what's so funny about peace, love, and meta-analysis, or what's wrong with meta-analysis, I should say. Corporations versus academia, who's better, who's helped us more, and then unmet needs and what you can do to help. But first, let's play our theme song. All right. I see a ton of people coming in out there. Now, if you've happened upon this, again, you're not an orthodontist, you're probably a little confused right now. This is what orthodontists do on a Sunday night, is we get together and we talk about orthodontics. So we start the week off the right way. If anyone's used a closing loop archwire in the last 6 months, I want to see some comments. I want to see, in all caps, Charles Tweed. So if you've used a closing loop archwire in the last 6 months, I want to see in all caps, Charles Tweed, okay? Surely someone out there is a closing loop user. And if you abbreviate it with CLAW, you get bonus points. So that's what we call the claw, the closing loop archwire. I'm going to try and bring Jonathan on the camera right now. We're going to see if it works. Maz Mashiri with the Charles Tweed in all caps. Thank you, Maz. I'm glad you're out there watching. We're going to see if this technology will work. Jonathan Nicozisis with the Charles Tweed. How about that?
Closing loop archwires with Invisalign, you know?
Yes!
Look at that. There he is.
Here we are.
Do you have a tuxedo
Excellent.
on? Look at you.
Well, I just came back from an emergency at the office clipping a wire, Sunday night braces. Oh, dead serious. So this is how I dress when I do my emergencies.
Okay, I don't know if that is like some sort of subtle like subtweet at Invisalign treatment and how there aren't any emergencies, or if you're being honest, but
well, it is Princeton, and people have certain expectations of their doctor, I suppose. So yeah,
that's impressive, man. I love that. You actually look like somebody in like a John Hughes movie that like the girl didn't fall in love with you, but it'll work out later or something, like the tuxedo.
Well,
I don't know what I'm going for.
I did minor in acting during my 3 years of college. No, but I sold you on that. But I did actually take a lot of. I did take some theater courses, just to stem the tide between all of my science classes.
Yeah, no joke. Oh, I did a lot of music. I had an almost minor in Bible actually in college. Biology is boring. I tell kids all the time when they're talking about what they want to do for a living, I say, I don't know that I really enjoyed much of biology, but I love dentistry and orthodontics. So if you don't like it, it's okay. I would have loved to study history or music or anthropology or acting maybe. My mom was a drama teacher, so I was in a few plays myself, but we won't go down that road too far. Yeah, for sure.
Interesting.
So she might be watching out there. Yeah.
Before we get started, I wanted to just clear up something that I found on the internet, and I kind of put 2 and 2 together. And is it true, Kyle, that you are the image behind one of the most popular memes of the internet? Is this your 8th grade picture right here? I mean, come on, guys. Is that you look older in 8th grade than you do now. I mean,
Okay.
you look younger now, so
So this
is there any truth to that?
These are so I'm not bad luck, Brian. I'll tell you that. These are the surprises that you had in mind, I guess.
Perhaps.
What's funny, but I didn't have braces in 8th grade, but if I had, I would not look that different than bad luck Brian, who actually looks like Michael Anthony Hall from the John Hughes film.
Of course. So, there you go.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to read your bio. I feel like now I have to read it and be really mean about it. Let's read your bio, and we'll jump in. That was great. Thank you.
Sure. No problem.
I have a few surprises to come to. Jonathan Nicozisis, if you can spell that, you get bonus points. He attended Penn for dental, Temple for ortho, and he's been in private practice since 1999, right before Y2K, in Princeton, New Jersey. He became Invisalign certified way back in 2000 when I didn't even know they were certifying people in Invisalign. He became a faculty member in 2007, and he's lectured internationally for Invisalign and about aligners over 400 times. That's impressive. In 2017, he co-founded the Aligner Intensive Fellowship with Dr. Maz Mashiri, who likes closing loops. And this is an online course that I've taken that I highly recommend. And then there's a lot more that we'll get into later on tonight. I'm going to clap it up. I try to use this clap app as much as I can. Let's clap it up for Dr. Jonathan.
Thank you. Thank you.
These are the new AirPods.
Right. Is that from the Something About Mary collection?
No.
I mean, does it double as a hair gel or not?
And that costs extra, actually. You're kind of laughing like George McFly in Back to the Future when he's telling jokes around the dinner table. I love it. Look, everyone loves your jokes. I don't know why that is. So I was going to say fly, Eagles, fly for your benefit.
They did. They got the job done. They got the job done. That's all I can say.
Yeah, exciting stuff. Also want to talk about my mug. You're the first person who asked, what was in my mug, what was I was drinking.
Nice.
And I just drink water, right? I hate to ruin that for you, but this is Sheldon Salins. I almost called him Salins Ortho, but Sheldon, I think, is out there watching, and we're going to celebrate Sheldon tonight.
One of our favorite people. I mean, that's why I have the bow tie here. So, it's all good.
Exactly, in his honor. We'll do this. I'm going to point at your smile. Anyway, he does that too, if you don't know. All right, on to the questions. We're going to jump right in here. Yes. We've got some really great questions I'm excited about. I'm going to start off with a few pretty controversial questions about the orthodontic profession, and we'll just see where it goes from there. But let's do this. So you asked this question, your pre-interview is, who do you think has helped the orthodontic profession more during the past 20 years? The academic establishment, let's say the residencies, researchers, or the corporate world? And those are the companies who've invented the products that we use. Who do you think has helped us more?
Well, it's not to try to, well, maybe I am trying to pit one against the other, but, and I have the utmost respect for those that teach us as in residency programs, my professors. I'm still very close to my chairperson and several of my professors. But, I think that the larger question I like to ask it, Kyle, is what is the role of academia? Is it only to educate and to validate, or why can't it be also to innovate? And I think that is a huge opportunity that academia has, let's say, dropped the ball on, because, at the speed of digital in the last 20 years, technology has really replaced, let's call it the labor of having to develop how we deliver orthodontic treatment, from cementing bands, pinching bands, to prefab bands, to technology has lessened the labor burden to deliver care. Now we have customized aligners, and we have customized brackets coming out, CAD CAM, all fantastic stuff. Who is leading that charge? Who is shaping the future, really, of orthodontics is kind of the question that I'm getting at. And I truly believe that academia should be 51% innovation and 49% validation, along with obviously educating the residents. Because, I think what we have seen is that they're dropping the ball. This opportunity to truly innovate has left this vacuum for corporations, with their corporate greed, so to speak. Greed is good, to paraphrase Gordon Gekko. And if there were not an incentive to innovate, then, we wouldn't have all these improvements of technology over the last 20 years. And so getting back to your question, who has helped the most, I think, dare I say that corporations have made the biggest impact, both good and bad. And I think academia is kind of playing catch up, regrettably. And so I really wish that there would be more innovation, because, orthodontic research is great, but, I think the extraction on extraction debate should be put to bed at this point. The ideal time of class 2 treatment should be put to bed at this point with the prospective trials from the University of Pennsylvania, Florida, and Chapel Hill. But where are the nuances, the new diagnostics, which I think is truly the next frontier to develop for really better differential diagnostics? Because again, technology has replaced us delivering orthodontics to a certain degree. I started practice, I had 6 chairside assistants. I'm down to 3. But I'm treating more new patients every year because technology has repurposed the scarcity of our resources, time, labor, and schedule capacity.
Well, let me insert to say this. There's a lot of good points you've raised, a lot of thought-provoking points. One thing you wrote in the little pre-interview that I liked, I think is true, is you said without corporate greed, which I will not endorse Gordon Gekko or anyone who quotes Gordon Gekko, sorry, but fair enough. Without corporate greed, and this is true, we would likely still be pinching bands and soldering brackets. I think it's hard to argue with that.
Sure.
I wrote this down as that I wouldn't be an orthodontist without academia, so I have everything to owe to them.
Of course.
But I wouldn't want to be an orthodontist without contributions from corporations and the doctors who work with them, who've innovated. And so I guess sort of the big question then at the end of all this is not maybe which one is better, like it's a black or white or it's a binary question, which I think is the problem, is I think I see this developing divide between people that are sort of pencil pusher, like pure academics. It's got to be evidence-based. That's all it can be, and I will accept no other answer. And then we have this sort of far side, which is it allows ourselves to be a mouthpiece for corporations, which that's not a good thing either, or that we just blindly trust the claims of a company that's seeking to make a lot of money off of us. So I think there is a middle ground. I guess I'm stuck on this question of how does an academic setting produce innovation? Because I'm with you on the educating and the validating, but the innovation, like what would you have in mind, I guess?
Let's look at the medical model. Medical schools, University of Pennsylvania, where I went to dental school, their medical school does plenty of research in conjunction with pharmaceutical companies and what have you, and to help nurture and foster such innovation for unmet clinical needs. And so I look at what's happening now in orthodontics, whether it's CAD-CAM, and we've got all these wonderful Clowen braces, light force braces. I think that's truly fantastic stuff. It's not necessarily where I want to focus on, but why is it up to some very smart individual private practitioner doctors to develop that? Why is that not in the academic setting? Why is orthoscience, on the top of mind of a very smart, keen orthodontist with a lot of, passion, and why is that not in the academic setting is sort of kind of where I'm getting at. And so I see really no problem in why academia should eschew corporate sponsorship in some of their research and trials, et cetera, because that's where truly innovation comes. When I did my relaxin research, I did it on my own as my own idea. I very intentionally did not patent the idea because I'd have to give Temple the lion's share of whatever came out. And I put my stuff in publication, and lo and behold, somebody called me and picked it up, and that's a whole other story. But, I think there's an opportunity there that academia should not be left behind, because I think there's a lot of black and white, and it doesn't have to be that way, is I guess really what I'm getting to.
Yeah, a couple comments that I think were interesting. I think it was Sheldon is our one commenter tonight. Can't companies work with schools? And he said, well, probably academia has too much political drama. It's also possible that academia doesn't see itself as the vehicle for innovation. And that it is enough to just be focused on the education, the validation.
But that gets back to my point of we'd still be pinching bands if they're metallurgy, bonding techniques, what have you, facilitated orthodontic tooth movement, customized aligners and CAD-CAM and et cetera. But let's just get this out of the way. I do speak for Align, and I do speak for Propel. So in case anybody's been living under a rock, let's just get that out of the way. So nobody's.
I should have had that in the bio. Yeah, no panties getting.
Well, Yeah.
And we'll talk about the KOL thing in 2 questions, I think. I guess what I've kind of noticed, it's not been that long since I was in the academic world, is it seems like there is a wave of innovation that it takes a while for academia to embrace. And so
Right.
my understanding is that when the MBT bracket came out, or the prescription bracket came out, it was seen as this is going to eliminate us as orthodontists and it's going to make it too easy. Of course, that didn't happen. I think the same thing has happened with aligners. The same thing is going to happen with whatever else it is. And I think what we keep finding is it's not going to happen.
Well, so that is a ripe opportunity for academia to come up with better differential diagnostics. Genotypic expression, phenotypic expression, biotypes of the gingiva, how they respond, different people's biotypes respond to forces. So we come up with better differential diagnostics that truly will be separating us as the specialists that we are, not a fancy tooth mechanic.
Yeah, right on. I like the idea. I think there's more to be said about it, but let's shift on into the next question about research in particular. And the reason I'm asking is because as recently as I think a week or 2 ago, there was some research that came out about Invisalign being less effective or less efficient. There's been a couple speakers who've kind of spoken on this. I think the research, there's some Vino. The research conclusion at current would be that it is less effective, less efficient than braces. Obviously, that's a really loaded statement, and so I'm going to let you unpack that. But I want to hear what your response to that is in the research that concludes those sorts of things. What do you have to say about that? Do you think that's accurate?
Well, simple answer is no. I mean, 20 years, has it improved? Certainly. I think that whole thing about aligners being ineffective is, dare I say, comical. With all the aligners coming out in the last couple years and Invisalign leading the way for the last 20 and only, getting better, and all the R&D that's behind what they do, to say that it's ineffective is silly. And so now, I look at these meta-analyses and, it seems like now, Kyle, we've got lies, damn lies, and now meta-analysis. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm not putting down the notion of meta-analysis because it is indeed a powerful tool to gather, larger data to have more powerful, statistically significant data. But when you kind of unwrap the onion, that is the last 2 that came out about aligners and Propel, it's. And I got, this is not my notion or my idea, but a very wise young orthodontist who I talk with a lot online put it to me this way, that publications that repackage flawed research and put them all together and voila, you've got this new publication that's powerful, is really analogous to repackaging subprime mortgages and collateralizing them as debt obligations, and miraculously you've got AAA rated, investment. And so whether it's the Invisalign one or the Propel one, is again, meta-analysis are good, but just because it's meta-analysis doesn't mean it's real good. I liken it to like a rock band coming out with the greatest hits album. One last time to get that one last squeeze from the juice, so to speak, from their record contract to make some revenue. And so I don't know. That's just me, and my thoughts. But, when it comes to the Propel one, I have some notes here if you don't mind, so I want to make sure that I get this right. But it was the systemic review from Fu and talking about accelerated tooth movement with minimally invasive orthodontic treatments. And the conclusion was that it was not sufficient evidence to determine that a single, not multiple, that a single use of MOPS, osteoperforations, can accelerate tooth movement, and that while minor invasive orthodontic procedures may have an effect, the high heterogeneity of the data collected was not reliable for this meta-analysis. And the reporting issues of this were simply that MOPS were, here's the simple issue with the reporting of that meta-analysis, that MOPS was significantly faster in 2 or 3 of the primary endpoints, but this was not mentioned in the conclusion nor the abstract. And it was significantly faster at month 3 as well, but for some reason this was left out of the analysis. And finally, when it comes to the design of these meta-analyses as specific for MOPS, and again, the study wasn't just on MOPS, it was on piezosurgery, et cetera, but it kind of lumped them all in together. These are all, patients are all fixed appliances. And when I did my initial MOPS on fixed appliances, I found, especially on extraction cases, I found that the teeth would move quickly in a month or two, and then it would stop because the binding was more, because the tooth would rotate and the wire would bind in the slot. And so once I went on to the lingual and bonded buttons, so I had traction of both the buccal and lingual, that's when the teeth started to fly. None of these patients in these studies were on aligners. So to come out with this blanket statement, so we talk about claims and corporate claims and us tarred and feathered KOLs, these evil KOLs that make too much money. You know, the claims from these meta-analyses can be just as egregious if you peel back what they are really doing. And more so in the design issue of this, MOPS was done once on these patients, and it didn't really go into the number of MOPS that were done and where they were done. And again, the inclusion criteria of this meta-analysis had a high heterogeneity of the data, and they concluded that there was no conclusive evidence because of the low reliability based on this high heterogeneity of the data. So Kyle, if you're baking a cake and your ingredients are B and S, your cake is going to come out tasting like B and S, okay? So plain and simple. That's my 2 cents on that.
So I sort of felt transported back to lit review there for a little bit. And this was me in lit review usually, glassy-eyed. No, that's right. Good. I guess my immediate question is, you take this personally, because you are a pretty big voice for Propel, for MOPS. I mean, you're probably the first one or two that I think of. Right.
Look, personally, I don't take anything personally. I've got very thick skin. And I've been speaking since 2003, Kyle. 2003 was my first talk up in Boston for Invisalign. And you know, I learned early on that if I'm going to deal with this, I'm going to be totally transparent. I'm going to show all my stuff, both good, bad, and otherwise. It's not like I get up there and all my stuff smells like roses. You've seen me speak before. I show my faults, I show my pitfalls, but more importantly, I show how I get out of them. And so I don't take it personally. What I do take personally is when I get, when not just me, but anybody gets unfairly tarred and feathered as a KOL, and they're just a talking piece. And what people don't appreciate or realize is the behind-the-scenes conversation of how much I push back, you know, whether it's Invisalign, a company that, you know, or Propel, both companies. And regardless of which company you speak for, being a speaker is a true privilege. And so for me, I take it personally. I try my best, I offer my best, and I show everything. And so when people are unfairly tarred and feathering me as this evil person, or in a very petty nature, post up, you know, the website to show, you know, what we made in any given year. I mean, as if that's going to show that my messaging is tainted. I mean, gosh, I don't know if you remember, I posted last summer that I was speaking at the Invisalign Teen Summit. Like, hey, by the way, it's a teen summit, I'm speaking at it. And somebody responded, care to disclose any, you know, bias? And I'm like, I just told you I'm speaking there. The notion that if you're speaking somewhere, you're getting paid to go speak, what do I have to disclose? Like, that person is obviously a bit sunburned to this whole thing. Kind of ridiculous, if you ask me.
Fair enough. Well, then let's shift into that. So that was our next question, was KOL criticism. That's one of probably the first thing I wanted to talk to you about. And I'll say I'm a KOL for a couple groups for 3M, for Comet Burrs, and then for Neon Canvas, which I co-own. And
I didn't realize Burrs needed a key opinion leader. That's fascinating.
I don't know that they need to, and I don't know that I'm a great KOL. And to be honest, I kind of joke with people, I'm sort of like the worst KOL ever, because I use what I want to use, and I use what I think works. And I used Comet and 3M before I agreed to speak for them or write articles for them. And I do my best to always be honest. I'll be honest, I may have a little bit different approach on the whole KOL criticism. I think a certain degree of it is healthy. I think it was a really good change for our profession to get that out there and to get that out in the open. And then I think it kind of jumped the shark, and it kind of became petty, and it became personal, and it became about trying to embarrass people, and it became a little bit about, and I could be wrong, but it felt a little bit like the people that wanted to be KOLs, but hadn't been asked to be KOLs were sort of upset, almost like sort of the high school, cafeteria where you weren't at the cool kids table or something. And what I would say is I don't feel like I'm at the cool kids table because I speak for a company. I think there's some assumption of that, or that I think I'm the smartest in the room, but I don't think that at all. I think I'm super fortunate to have been asked, and I think I try and be nice with everyone that I deal with. I think I can speak pretty decently, and so people have asked me to do that. I think there are absolutely really talented people that will never get to speak and that will never get asked to be interviewed, and that's a shame, but it's not always obvious who those people are. So
right. No, I agree with most of what you said. I don't know if it's the people that weren't asked to be it and some jealousy in that point, but I just think, to your point, transparency right on there. I've always been transparent. I'm not out there promoting anything. Of course, I speak for Invisalign. All the cases that you see that I post are in Invisalign. And I just try to show my experiences, the positive impact both customized aligners and Propel has had in my practice. And it's not like anybody pays me to post there. I don't own stock in Propel. I don't know any equity in Propel. I do own Align stock, but I use it not because I own the stock, but it's just
a lot of people own their stock. I mean, that's that's probably 10% of orthodontists own Align stock. I don't, but fair enough. I think at the end of the day, people will learn who you are over time. I've known you for a really long time, and I feel like you're a straight shooter, an honest person. I think it's important to know who people speak for. I think it's about as obvious as anything that you speak for Invisalign, so I don't think that's ever been in question. And so, again, I think there's a healthy degree of that. I saw in one group where someone was asking people to change their literal Facebook names to indicate KOL, associations. And I think that's where it kind of jumps the shark. And so it should not define me as a person, or certainly as a doctor or as a professional, who I speak for. But certainly anytime that it comes up and it's relevant, you should disclose that. And I think that has been the healthy conclusion of it, is for us to all be a little bit more honest and to know that that thing is, how much we get paid or whatever they pay us, it's not hidden. So in conclusion of this whole segment, research, I think the goal for all of us is to support a new wave of research that is good, that is accurate, that does actually have some bearing on real life. Because a lot of it, my thesis, it's not really changed the world, so maybe 30 seconds on what can we do to get better research and work together as a whole profession.
Well, I think kind of tying in claims made by companies obviously can be completely redunculous at sometimes and silly, and therefore it is the role of academia to validate such claims, but there are regulatory bodies to take care of this, FDA when it comes to certain tools that are manufactured, et cetera, how you market them. The FDA regulates that kind of stuff. When it comes to research, though, I think the beauty of orthoscience, I don't know a lot about it, but what I can see, the fact that we are now truly able in 3 dimensions objectively see what our treatment actually did compared to what we actually thought it did. I think 5, 10, 20 years from now, we're going to have all this wonderful retrospective data to go back and analyze, number one. Number two, I think the opportunity for better differential diagnosis, as I previously said, is ripe for the exploration and exploitation. I mean, I think that should be born out of the university, not some company that's going to, figure out the genome or expression or what have you, and how somebody might grow, and then now we can't use it for orthodontics unless we want to pay a pretty penny for it. So I truly think that's where the next wave should be, because moving a tooth can't get much more sexier, right? I mean, self-ligating brackets, torquing the base and the face, 18 slot, 22 slot, customized aligners. I think that's been done. We need something truly novel to truly differentiate ourselves as the specialist.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think that orthoscience is an example. Something like that, if not that, will be, I think, embraced by academics and researchers alike. And I think if anyone's not embracing it, it's going to be private practitioners. And so I think there's always this question of what new research could actually change how you practice. And I think the question for most people is, well, probably nothing. So it kind of comes down to the sales rep in your office offering a deal on something that looks kind of flashy, which is sad. So I think as a profession, we need to stay in tune with what research is presenting. So I am thankful for those that are all about research. Kevin O'Brien, I always read his little blogs.
Sure.
Blogs. And I'm thankful that he and others are out there with all that to share that. And it does feel like a little bit like Lit Review, and I'm glad to be able to keep up with it. So let's shift on to this. We've got to talk a little bit about Seinfeld.
Yeah.
A little baseline there. Yeah. I don't play too much because I don't want to get this taken down or get some sort of
right
thing. So I'll turn it off there, but a little bit of a little slap bass. I've got a couple things for you. This actually, I was promoting this. And you can see this photo that we used to promote it, right?
Right.
And I had someone ask, "Oh, it's backwards," but it says, "Is he Jerry Seinfeld's cousin?" I don't know if you look like Jerry Seinfeld. Have you ever heard that before?
No, used to get a lot of Hugh Grant back in the day when my hair was a little fuller. I'm 47 years old now, so things aren't what they used to be.
You look great for 47. Hugh Grant,
thank you.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, Hugh Grant I used to get a lot.
Yeah, pre what was it, Divine Brown, I think? You want that Hugh Grant.
Destiny Brown?
Something, where I think it was Divine, but I could be wrong. Someone fact check that for me. But I have a question about Seinfeld. This is information I need to get out of my mind. I need to put research in here and get Divine Brown or whatever it was out of my mind. What's your favorite episode of Seinfeld? And then we'll shift on to the next one.
Believe it or not, I have thought a lot about this. And I always come back to the marine biologist. When George, that episode starts out with something completely just silly about Golden Boy, this T-shirt, his favorite T-shirt that he washes, and it's his first one that he wears out of the laundry, to Elaine and the publishing and the guy from Russia and war, what is it good for? And he throws out the planner that's beeping and hits somebody in the head, to Kramer playing golf. And then there's like George, who Jerry set up with somebody from high school or college, and he says he's a marine biologist. And what I love about that is, and what the genius of Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld is, oftentimes their storylines had these parallel stories that at the very end, unknowingly, unseemingly, would somehow, interact. And it would just make you laugh. And so when George is in the diner, talking about his experience of saving this beached whale, and he goes into this soliloquy, and the sea was angry that day, my friends, like an old man sending back soup at a diner, and then he reaches in the blowhole and pulls out, and it's Kramer's golf ball that he was hitting out the beach, into the ocean. So that's my favorite one. It's just funny. I laugh every time I see it or when I think about it.
Well, I've always thought that the orthodontic Seinfeld was Glenn Krieger and not you, but I guess you could be Glenn's cousin. So a little bit Seinfeld theme, just a little bit.
Right.
I was reading online that song was actually ad-libbed, but one of the greatest theme songs for sure. I love it. Let's shift into this. Let's talk about.
No, before we go there, I know you said that you're not a big Seinfeld expert or fan, but I've done my own trolling about you on the internet, and evidently you're into role playing or what have you. But I don't know if this is familiar, if this is you in their family photo, and you're wishing you're George and photoshopped into Krieger's photo. And then there's this one where I don't know how cold it gets in Tennessee, but that's with the puffy jacket. And
I do know the puffy jacket. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I think you do a little modeling as well, Kyle.
Okay, that's
right?
good.
And then the final one.
The world's worst photoshopping ever. I love
the final one is the Kyle. The Kyle, and a little TDO right here for you. So I'll be emailing these.
I need the copy of that. I got to print that one off. Put that up on the wall, like a nice little painting. So I got most of those references. So was that Elaine's boss or something? Is that
Krieger? No, it was George's boss.
George's boss.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I know a lot of it was Divine, by the way. I knew that.
Okay.
So
all right.
Hugh Grant trivia, bring it on. Seinfeld trivia. I've watched some of it. I've never gotten into it. I'm a much bigger Curb Your Enthusiasm fan, which is coming back. So
I can't wait.
I'm excited about that. Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Right.
So let's shift into this. We got 25 minutes because we got this hard stop at 60 minutes on Instagram.
Sure.
So let's get through this. I'm super excited to discuss this with you because, well, I don't know, it's you, Jonathan, but we're going to talk about the biggest moments in orthodontics,
Ooh.
both good and bad. So just the biggest moments is like the time person of the year. It doesn't have to all be
Right.
good, positive stuff. And I started orthodontics literally 10 years ago. So this is, I think, perfect for me. 2010, started at UT Memphis. It's been a true pleasure to get into this profession, to get to know people,
Right.
to become friends with people, to get to speak at meetings. I mean, it's really been an amazing 10 years for me, and to see how much our profession has changed and how much it's gotten better. So I polled people inside the Digital Orthodontist. What's interesting is my top 5 was literally the same as the votes went. So I feel like I was pretty good at guessing. And so we'll talk a little bit about each one. And so number 5 on this list is the biggest things of the last 10 years. Number 5 was 3D printing. And so I'll say a couple things and let you talk a little bit about it. But I think 3D printing is no doubt amazing. It has not changed the way that I've practiced. I actually got 2 3D printers, Form 2s. I tried them for about 9 months, and I just felt like the workflow wasn't there. I was working harder, and I didn't feel like it was working as consistently as Algin and Stone. That's just me. I do think this is the road forward. I think eventually that's where we'll be, and I think there's a lot of different amazing things. It really opens the door, I think, most importantly, to in-house aligners. It probably as much as anything, but I guess what's your take? I know you have a printer. Are you still using it?
I do. I just, you know, as digital as I am with my aligners at 85–90% in my practice, I just got my first 3D printer this past summer. Sprint Ray Pro. Nobody paid me or asked me to say that, but I just kind of sat on the sidelines until, you know, the economics of it made sense and the technology made sense. And I have an in-house lab technician, and she's been with the practice for, you know, 30+ years. I have no intention of ever getting rid of her until she wants to leave. And so I simply use it to make my retainers. So I've eliminated, the only alginates I still take are for Hyraxes that we make in-house, but I'm this close to buying a laser welder so that we'll be able to, with Mesh Mixer, ditch the digital die, print that, and fit our bands on the model and have her weld that way. So I think it's huge, you know, and for those that want to do aligners and in-house aligners, you know, my hat's off to them. I have zero interest in backwards integrating the manufacturing process of aligners and labeling and sequencing or whatever, because, you know, like it or not, for me, the Invisalign lab bill is part lab bill with amazing technology, but also part marketing and driving people into my practice. And whether you like it or not, that's the way. And look, competition is great, and 3M may have great aligners, ULab may have great aligners, but until they get the marketing aspect of it, why would I switch? Why would I do in-house aligners? Because it's about driving people into my practice. That's the way I look at it.
So we don't agree there, probably, for what it's worth, because I think there's a line there. It's what's the dollar value for that patient acquisition, and how much is it the patient actually come to see us as the doctor versus coming to see us as the Invisalign provider? Mainly because just about everyone and their mom provides Invisalign these days.
No different than LASIK. No different than LASIK. I was with a friend last night. He's a LASIK doctor, and we were having this discussion, and he's like, listen, it's about the value add. Everybody does LASIK around me, but I'm killing it because I market better. And it's as simple as that. I have better value adds, and so it's no different than anything else.
Yeah. I think there's going to be a time where that no longer is perhaps as relevant, and I think there is a break point there. But as long as the other company options are the same price relatively as Align, I think you could argue that it makes as much sense to stick with them. I think there's some really interesting things about what 3M is doing. I think there's some really interesting things about doing it in-house. I'm still sticking with my workflows that I'm used to. I'm just not trying to become a lab right now. I have some good friends that have done that. But anyway, suffice it to say, 3D printing has been a really amazing thing, and I've been able to watch that actually happen and come alive, and it's been really cool. I tried to be an early adopter, and I figured out, you know what, maybe I'm not such the best early adopter in this world. So this segues pretty well into the next one, which is direct-to-consumer aligners. So number 4, direct-to-consumer aligners. I think this probably should have been 2 or 3, but I think a lot of us didn't want to vote for it, to be honest. But if you're talking about the biggest moments in orthodontics over the last 10 years, certainly there's been no greater sea change than this, I think, at least outside of our industry. Inside of our industry, in terms of my day-to-day, to be honest, like direct to consumer, and we won't name the groups by name, but it's not really had a huge impact on my practice, I don't think. And there's one down the street. I mention it in consults from time to time, but I don't see it really changing so much about my practice. And maybe in the next 10 years, perhaps. But what's your take on direct-to-consumer aligners and its influence in the last 10 years?
Well, it hasn't really been 10 years. It's been, what, 4 or 5?
Yeah, 3,
something
4,
like the 3.
yeah.
I don't even know.
Yeah.
To your point, it has not changed the way that I practiced. It has, on occasion, had me to have conversations in my initial exam that I didn't have to have 5, 10, 20 years ago.
Sure.
And I'm happy to have that. I have I have a scan shop right between 2 of my practices, dead center. I visited it. It was a complete crap show. I mean, it was horrible, right? And so the way I look at it is they are direct-to-consumer is addressing, I don't want to call it a need, but a consumer, a customer. I know that's a 4-letter word in orthodontics, but we're business people, not just healthcare providers, and you have to think like that. And I think that we have to figure out a proper way to engage these people. Getting back to my friend who's the optometrist, does the LASIK, he was saying it's all about getting them in on the low end, and you upsell them. And he's like, I have 90% positive upsell to the people to the deluxe model, to the deluxe LASIK. And so those people, when you get them in to discuss the value of the doctor. And if you want the low end, this is what you get for that. And I know that's uncomfortable for us. I get it. Yeah. I'm very resistant to that. But we have to figure out a way to engage these people and make them our own. It's uncomfortable for us. But once you figure out how to do it, like when Invisalign had the experience locations at the King of Prussia store, King of Prussia is 55 and 65 miles from my 2 offices. The first 12 weeks, I got 16 exams. Of the 16, 8 showed up. Of the 8, I closed 4 of them. I mean, what bracket company does that for me? Right? And so when it comes to direct to the consumer, it's the same thing. Like, let's get these people in and educate them. And whether it's us, whether it's corporations, whether it's the AAO, it's up to us to figure out a way to properly educate these would-be patients.
Yeah, sure. I think it's created an enormous burden, you could say, on the AAO for the ADA. Mm-hmm. And sure. I like to think that the last year or so there's been a turn where both ADA and AAO are
totally agree
quite a lot, which has been totally great to see. And I think there's been this sort of movement against the AAO, and I think there's been this sort of this embrace in a sense of the AAO, and I think that's great. So that's been a whole big part of this decade too that we didn't really mention was the effect that change is having on organized dentistry and orthodontics. But hey, we don't have time for everything. So number 3, we're going to go on to new independent meetings. And so I think the last 10 years, and I don't have enough, I haven't been around for long enough to really say this for sure, but it feels like this is a new thing. Maybe Ortho Voice was one of the first ones. Of course, you and I were in Orthodontic Exchange where we did this. And I remember at the time, so this was like the first Facebook group, which we'll talk about here in a second. We had the meeting, and it's still one of my favorite meetings. I guess we were in Vail, I think it was, and you handed out these sashes, and I did find this. Okay?
Yes.
So I was able to find it. So I'm not wearing this correctly, but I won't explain exactly what it says, but I will say that at the time, to be, this is like with Lance and Salins and David Butler, for you to hand this out, I feel like I had really made it, man. It was like a cool moment. So we had a lot of fun there. There's also MKS, which was a really great. The first one and the second one especially were really great. And now we have like Women in Orthodontics, Mother of Pearls Conference, Orthopreneurs, which I spoke at this last year, and I got this amazing swirly
I got that too.
So yeah,
I got that
thank you,
too.
Glenn. I didn't know what I was getting. I thought I was getting some sort of like, I don't know, like biological sample or something. It was like packed so tightly, but it was this swirly thing, which my kids thought were really cool. And so, what a really amazing moment in our industry where the landscape is really changing. And I think the only negative is that it's perhaps taking away from some of the regional meetings. And so some of the regional meetings are kind of combining together. And I guess, do you feel like these meetings have helped or hurt our profession more or less?
Listen, there's no such thing as job certainty for you or me or any of our employees. Same is said with meetings. And if meetings are not providing content that people think will be impactful, worthy of shutting down your office and traveling, leaving your families, then these meetings have filled an unmet need, a void, that it's scratching an itch that people either didn't realize they had, or now that they've gone to it, it feels real good to scratch that itch, whether it's the fellowship, the camaraderie among the people, when you're there interacting, sharing stories, and not just sitting in a stuffy lecture hall at a convention center in some random city.
Sure. Yeah. Dovey says content and an experience. I think that's true. I think that
right.
Those are the two things that they definitely seized on. I think they also seized on the networks that already exist on Facebook. And so some of my favorite meetings certainly have taken place there. And to be fair, I still love the AAO. I went to SAO a few weeks ago and loved it too. So more power to all of them, and hopefully that you see them both thrive. I'm a little bit at a meeting fatigue, I have to be honest, but still, when we speak here at a lot of meetings, and so I think that's part of it. But I'm going to push on. I'm excited about the 6 or 7 meetings I'm going to be at this next year. So number 2, let's shift on into this. You're probably familiar with number 2, and number 2 biggest moment in the decade was digital scanning technology.
Yes.
So this is a picture of me from December of 2015 with my.
It looks like your 8th grade picture.
This was 8th grade. This is when I was 14 years old. This was a Drake Christmas sweater, from Hotline Bling, but it was Sleigh Bells Ring. I think it was the first in my area. So that's been coming up on 4 years now that I've had this thing.
Right.
And scanners were around before then. They've been around this whole decade and even before that. Right. But really, I feel like that generation that started with the iTero Element and then the 3Shape was really where it kind of came into its own. And that it became this thing where I got to have one of these. And there's no doubt I would not do nearly as much aligners as I do without the scanner, but still doing PVS. I remember we do the heavy and then the wash. I mean, my goodness. So
it's patient experience. But again, that gets back to, I think it's more than just scanning for aligners. It's about a digital workflow. So whether you use iTero or 3Shape, it's about engaging the patient. And 5-10 years from now, Kyle, it will no longer be novel. Getting a scan. Now people are like, holy smokes, this is so cool. I'm like, well, I rent it out for parties. Instead of pinning it down like a donkey, you can take this to your house for your next sleepover. Nonetheless, but it's about digital workflow. I think there are bells and whistles in each of the scanners. I love my iTero. I know they've got more bells and whistles coming out that will be engaging the patient, not just in your office, but potentially before you even get to your office, and et cetera. So it's going to be, I think, another wet and wild, fascinating time over the next 5 years to come when it comes to scanners.
Well, I look forward to it. I think it's reached a point where it would be almost impossible for me to want to practice without it. And we do it for all of our appliances. So aligners is one thing, but every appliance that we use, that's several hundred. Use that scanner. So again, I've not even done the 3D printing and the whole retainer thing, which I tried. But at that point, it's basically every patient that you see. And for those of us who like to get models, it's literally every patient. So it's amazing how much we use those things. Well, that brings us to number 1, and I should have a drum roll ready.
Right.
I guess I'm going to do a drum roll. Yeah. So it's the number 1 biggest moment in orthodontics the last 10 years. Has been Facebook groups, which is ironic and a little meta to be voting in a Facebook group and to vote for Facebook groups, but such is life. But I think for me, at least as an orthodontist, it's definitely had the greatest impact on my practice. And I like what you said in the notes, and I hate to steal a quote from you, but you said that the orthodontic Facebook groups phenomenon is a culmination of the preceptorship model or the apprenticeship model of orthodontic education, which I thought was a really interesting take. And so it's sort of like shadowing or learning from another orthodontist. You're just doing it digitally. And of course, there are friendships that are forged. But man, I cannot tell you how much information and how many things I do in my practice today just because of things I've read on the Facebook groups. I can't even imagine without them.
Well, what's fascinating, I've been in practice now 20 years, and I practiced with a partner or associate and eventually became a partner. But one day a week, I was in a multidiscipline practice as the only orthodontist there. And I was truly on an island by myself, where if I had an issue, and I loved it, it was a great challenge because I had to really forge all my knowledge and expertise and use my skill set that I learned to make decisions without relying on a partner that's been practicing for 30 years. And fast forward to the people that are coming out now, I think the Facebook groups provide such a wealth of not only knowledge and experience, but really support, so that if you are indeed a private doctor, a solo doctor in private practice, you are no longer by yourself. You can pose a question at 8:15, and by lunchtime, you'll have, a dozen answers. That's fantastic. And so getting back to my point, orthodontics, the history of orthodontics is steeped not only in residency programs, but also in the apprenticeship model, where people, and I knew one when I first came out. I was very good friends with one who went not to a program, but went through an apprenticeship. And he was anointed, after 3 years of shadowing somebody, anointed that you are now an orthodontist. Like, that's fascinating. And so the Facebook groups, I think, have had such a huge impact in that regard, from the friendships, absolutely, the fellowships, the information. Yes.
Yeah, and I think on the whole, it's been great for our profession. I think there's been some negatives that have come from it. I think for sure we could go down some of that, like the bullying and the name calling and all this kind of mess. But I think by and large, the king's share of it has been really positive. And
if it wasn't for the Facebook groups, I wouldn't know what a KOL is, because I had no idea. True. People were like, "Oh, you're a KOL." I'm like, "What's KOL mean?" Like, anyway,
just nonetheless. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. So next 10 years, I was going to do a little bit about this. We're down to 9 minutes, so I'm going to have to speed up a little bit. Here are the things I think that we might call the biggest things in the next 10 years. We can check back in 10 years. I'm sure we'll want to do that. But I think in-house aligners will become a big part of that. I think maybe it's in-house treatment. It might even be that we're printing braces. I'm kind of curious if that'll happen in the next 10 years. I definitely think in-house aligners will. We'll be able to print them very quickly and print the aligners themselves. I think fully customizable digital treatment options for a good chunk of our profession will be a big deal. I think consolidation will be a big part of the next 10 years. And then I'm interested to see how orthoscience, how that impacts, something like that, if not that, impacts the research world and how we view, research. So let's shift into this. We're going to do one question, and we're going to go to our top 5 because we're running out of time. Dr. Dennis Flanagan, he submitted a question. He wanted to stir the pot with this question. So stir away, Dennis. What is your opinion on companies that work with the direct-to-consumer aligner groups? And so there's been a few that have done that. There was one recently that came out this week. I think Dental Monitoring was accused of some things, and they had a press release. But and then I guess the follow-up is, how should orthodontists respond to companies who work with direct-to-consumer aligner groups?
Well, at the end of the day, like with anything, people vote with their wallet, and that's fine. And who am I to judge? Who am I, as Jonathan, to judge what people decide to do or not do? I personally don't like it when, we have companies that are, I don't want to say helping them, but, I don't like it. But at the same time, they're businesses, right? And so it's not like they sign a Magna Carta that, they won't commit such sin by going to that. And, if they think that they can gain more market share, then boy, have at it. So direct to consumer is one thing. GPs is another thing. I don't like it. I don't use dental monitoring. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't have, the only thing that makes sense is maybe compliance issues to keep people on track. Compliance is not a huge issue for me in my practice. For those that would not, that are not compliant, who says they're going to be compliant with this, piece of plastic box that costs X amount of dollars, I don't have issues with tracking, the notion of, well, no go what? Well, have them wear the aligner more. Well, if it's a crappy clean check, it's a crappy clean check. Not going for another week and chewing on a pencil to make it fit better isn't make a lot of sense to me.
Well, and if they're not compliant already, they're not going to be compliant when you tell them they're not compliant. So yeah, I'm with you. I think there was an interesting thing that came out of that specific situation was that there's a meeting, the Digital Braces and Innovation Summit. It's February 28th in Denver. They didn't ask me to say this, but it's Embrace, Lightforce, Orthodontics, and Clowen that are all working together to do a meeting, which is pretty,
I think it's fantastic.
Unparalleled. I can't think of another example. Those are the 3 kind of digital treatment solutions that are all born out of doctors, orthodontists. and they actually took them off the event, and they're seeking to try and be orthodontists only for as long as they can be, they said, which I think is really impressive. We'll see in the few years that follow if that's the case. I think it seems it's inevitable, and I don't know if this is true or not, but it seems like companies, they generally eventually work with general dentists, and I don't know if it's inevitable the next stage is they work with direct-to-consumer if they can. I don't know.
Look, direct-to-consumer is one issue. General dentist is another. I think the GP thing is really much ado about nothing. It's like pissing in the ocean. It's not going to make a big difference. Prior to aligners coming out, bracket companies sold to private, to general dentists. But direct-to-consumer, it might be something else that will truly rub people the wrong way. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We had some other good questions. We're going to skip ahead though to the top 5 so we can finish this thing before it cuts us off. We don't want that.
No.
So I want to do this is our top 5 segment, the TDO top 5, and we're going to ask you 5 quick questions, and I want quick answers here. The first one is, if you weren't an orthodontist, Jonathan, what would you be?
Without a doubt, I would be a meteorologist, and my nickname on TV would be Nor'easter Nicozisis. Nor'easter is a type of storm that comes from north up to the east, and that would be my name. I mean, I've always, like George Costanza always wanted to be an architect. I want to be...
You want to be a meteorologist?
A meteorologist, yes.
I love it. I don't know why, but I felt the need to write down Nor'easter Nicozisis, so I wrote that down. In 2 to 3 words, what is your favorite thing about being an orthodontist?
The creativity, whether it's the interaction with the patients, whether it's educating my fellow colleagues, whether it is the independence and the autonomy that comes with being an orthodontist. That all culminates into patient care, obviously. But that's what I truly love about it.
Yeah, right on. What is one thing you wish you'd known sooner as a resident or as a young orthodontist?
To not bother with a 22 slot.
Is that a 22 slot guy? What are you talking about? I love the 22
Come
slot.
on.
All right, we'll figure that out some other day. Who is your biggest influence and why?
I think the notion of my family and my father and my grandfather coming to this country. Many people have similar stories, but it always just was a motivating factor. And here I am, by the grace of God and what my family has gone through and endured, and it's truly the American dream. So I feel very fortunate with that.
That's an awesome answer. And what do you want to be remembered by, Jonathan?
Legacy. I want to be remembered that honest orthodontist, somebody that likes to have a lot of fun, does not take myself too seriously, but that truly try to help out my colleagues and contribute the best way that I could. I consider myself a first among equals, and as that, I believe that if we all have that same sentiment, we contribute what we feel we are the best at for the betterment of the profession. And I am where I am now with doing what Maz and I are doing with the fellowship, and 2,200 orthodontists plus globally and counting. It's it's a privilege. It's a blessing to have. It's something I don't take lightly. And I think we're leaving a pretty good mark with that.
Yeah, right on. Well, I want to thank you for being on here. We've got a minute and a half to wrap up, and I'm going to clap it up for you. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on tonight's show. I want to make a couple plugs, and so don't get out of here just yet. I want you to, if you've not done the Aligner Intensive Fellowship, you got to do that. As Jonathan said, 2,100 orthodontists and counting. It's amazing. I've taken the course. It was fabulous. I found out that UT Ortho is going to do the course, which I was really proud to hear and happy to hear. AlignerFellowship.com. If you speak Portuguese and if you happen to live in Brazil, there's going to be a Brazil course for you. That's incredible, subtitled and translated and all that. AlignerFellowship.com/PT. Catch Jonathan in person at Dynaflex's inaugural Synergy event, February 21st to 22nd at the Venetian in Las Vegas. That sounds fun. You can catch me next speaking Friday, April 3rd in Nashville, Tennessee at a 3M oral care event. We'll be at the AAO, I'm sure. Check us out on Apple Podcasts. Give us a 5-star review. I'll be back in January. And then lastly, again, thank you, Jonathan, for doing this show. You were fantastic.
Thank you.
I enjoyed spending time
Kyle.
with you. I'm going to play us out with our song. And from all of us here at the Digital Orthodontist Live and all of us here at Instagram, This is Dr. Kyle Fagala signing off. Here we go. So you can kick me off now, Instagram.
Happy Hanukkah, everybody. Happy Hanukkah. And thank you, Kyle. Happy Festivus tomorrow for everybody. And thank you for letting me air my grievances tonight. Thank you.
You did.